are the Lit Ladies.
I'm Christie.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Carissa.
Three writers and moms exploring how to live out our faith in our literary lives.
We span the country from the coast to the Midwest. And with different stages of life, careers, and favorite genres, we're sure to cover the literary landscape.
In every episode, we'll discuss books we love, reading life, and writing craft, using the Bible as our guide for beauty, goodness, and truth. New episodes drop every other Friday.
Hello and welcome to the Lit Ladies podcast. Today we are talking all about romance as we head into Valentine's Day, Valentine's month. We are going to do some deep dives on the romance conversation. And we have special guest Pepper Basham with us, who I'm going to say is the queen of romance in the Christian fiction world. She's shaking her head no, but I'm saying yes. And I think my co-host agree. That's okay. The pressure doesn't have to be high. But we're so glad you're with us, Pepper. And why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Oh, great. And I'm so glad to get to be with you guys. So yes, my name is Pepper Basham, like hit them real hard. That's what I tell people. My name sounds like a boxer name. Anyways, I am, if you look online, you'll find out I'm an Appalachian girl. So I was raised in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. Now I live in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina in Asheville, North Carolina. Love this part of the world, love the culture, love the people, love the beauty. And so was raised in a big Appalachian family. So if you've ever seen my big fat Greek wedding, that little Greek side is a whole lot like the Appalachian side with a different accent. And so I am, of course, a wife. I'm a mother of 5 amazing kids. I'm a speech language pathologist by day and a university instructor sometimes. And I'm also, as you said, a writer of historical and contemporary romance, underline, bold print, romance, part of that. So yes, that's me.
That's you. So not to put words in your mouth, but your books all have romance in them,
yes.
Right? That is a key factor in all of your books, whether it's historical or contemporary.
Exactly. I don't want to write anything else that doesn't have some sort of romance in it. And it doesn't have to be like big romance. It can be a small, subtle type, but it's romance. There's in every one of them.
In every one of them. Speaking to my heart, I write romantic suspense, but my suspense always has romance in it. So
excellent.
Love it. Love it, love it.
Okay, but wait, I have a question because when I was researching all the books that you've read or written, there was a true crime one, The Red Ribbon. Now, does that one also have romance?
Oh, yes. And interestingly enough, this story, I really don't care to ever write another true crime ever. But whenever you're starting out in the publishing journey, you're trying to find ways to get your name out there. And so Barbara was just sending out requests for people who'd be interested in writing in a series. And so the first one they asked was a place series, which was my first book with them, My Heart Belongs in the Blue Ridge. And then the next series they did was the true crime. And I'm like, oh, I've only had one book with them. I should try this at least. And there was a really big true crime event that happened in my the place where I grew up, my hometown, a courthouse massacre. And so I was like, oh, you know what? It's part of my culture, the Appalachian culture. It's my time period, which was the early 1900s for historical. And I can put a romantic thread in it to really help it have a hopeful ending, because the real story, the true story, is not very hopeful. And so the romantic thread in that story ends up being the hope that's in the story of the true crime.
That's a good question, Christie.
Yeah.
And also just a fun side note, you have a lot in common with Christie because she's a speech language pathologist and she lives in North Carolina. And how far is that? How far do you live from Asheville, Christie?
It's probably 5 or 6 hours. I'm on the coast.
Nice. Beach weather.
Yes.
The other side of the country. Okay, so tell us about your journey, because I've read a bunch of your books. I think I read a lot of them. Were you self-published? Am I imagining that? Or is that where you started? Like what? Tell us your writing journey.
It's a roller coaster, and self-publishing was not my first book. So,
okay.
I had my first book published in 2015. So I'm coming up on 10-year anniversary of my first book being published. And let me kind of go back and give you a little bit of the journey. I'll try to make it short because it's not very exciting.
No, it is to us, so it's fine.
So I've been writing, I think, basically my whole life. I grew up with my grandmother telling these big, fantastic Appalachian stories of family history. And they were so colorful and beautiful. And I really do believe that God puts a talent and a calling inside of us for story, for those of us who choose to write or be creative in that kind of way. And so from early on, I just loved stories, and I was writing them really early. I have a copy of the one I wrote when I was 10 still, and illustrated poorly. And so, I mean, everybody's noses are like huge. But anyway, so I went to my first writers conference when my second born child was almost 2 years old.
Okay.
And that was the first time I ever heard about a synopsis, or the first time I ever heard about a business card and those sorts of things. I just had the opportunity, so I went. And that started me on the journey of what the business of writing is, not just the storytelling side. Mm-hmm. And so I started pursuing writing pretty seriously around about 2008-ish, 2007. Started entering contests. I took the Jerry Jenkins writing course, and I was just trying to figure out how this was what I needed to do to make something happen. So in 2014, I went to the American Christian Fiction Writers Conference, and was introduced to several people, got an agent, and was offered 2 contracts that year, one for a historical series and one for a contemporary book. Both were from small publishing houses. And so I started there. So my first 4 books are with a small publishing house. And interwoven in the middle of that, I started doing some indie publishing as well. And then in God's good time, I had my first book published with Barber, which then started propelling me forward with having higher numbers and more visibility until 2021, the summer of 2021, I got my first contract from HarperCollins, Thomas Nelson.
Wow. Okay. And do you mind me asking what the small publisher was, or is that not?
2 different ones. Vinspire Publishing, which is no longer a publishing house. And it was, again, when you're dealing with very small publishing houses, it comes with its own rewards, but it also comes with a great many setbacks for a writing career sometimes. Okay. Depends on the publishing house. But bigger publishers, and I could do a whole talk about this because I've been through a lot of different ones, but bigger publishing houses, those numbers from a smaller house are not impressive usually.
I see.
And
okay.
So and they don't really view indie publishing in the same way as they do small press sometimes. What I say about getting into HarperCollins is that I was just consistently trying to grow myself and God's timing, because I really don't have another answer than that, where it was just the right story with the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And I had all these books before that one, but that's the one that really started moving my career in a direction that I'd been hoping would happen for years before that.
Wow.
I'm curious what that book was.
Oh, Authentically Izzy.
Oh, okay. Cool. I just started that one.
Yeah. So I think it's so unique that it got their attention. And then once they realized what kind of writing I do and how willing I am to try different things with writing, that I've just had a great relationship with them. And I am so grateful. One thing I would say for people who are trying to get published, for me, and this is from a Christian perspective, so for people who aren't Christians, this may not have as big impact as it did for me as a Christian, but I can look back on the poor choices I made in my writing career, and accepting early publication at one or two of those small houses was not a wise choice for future planning. I didn't know that. And so when I was going through the struggle of not being able to find an agent again, or not being able to get published again after having those small house publications, I really started questioning, well, Lord, I've worked so hard.
Yep.
Why can't you help me find a place for these stories you've given me? And I realized that my heart needed to be prepared for letting go of them. I feel as though the desire to be published could have been a small idol in my life instead of the joy of just doing the stories for the glory of God. And if he had put me in the publication realm of a larger house early on in my career, I think it would have been easier for me to be jerked around by that little God of productivity and visibility, and not just
girl preach.
And not just have a grateful not just have a grateful heart that he's given me what he's given me in the time fashion that he has. And that's not an easy truth. It's a hard truth, especially when you're working hard, you're writing good stories, and people are telling you that your stories are good. Even big names are telling you this is a great story. Well, you can do something with it. And I wouldn't have known that. I know I would. I'm getting a little emotional at it because the grace of God in doing that for me to help my heart be at a good place to just write for the joy of being able to. I think that's what he wants us to do when he's put a calling on our hearts. It doesn't mean we don't work hard still. It doesn't mean we don't have disappointments still. But it does mean that our goal is not publish me. Our goal is, Lord, let me write this story for your glory and for the joy of the calling and for the readers who need to hear it.
Yep. So many things you just said resonated. And one of my big takeaways at the last ACFW conference was, why do I write? And I had to wrestle with that. Why do we do this? Because if it's for whatever, fill in the blank, that's going to fade. If it's not for the Lord and his glory, then we need to go back to basics and figure out why. And also, I just have to say, and I just get chills about this, but one of my favorite things about our Christian fiction community is that you have believers all over the country, all over the world. We may be different denominations. We might like different books. Maybe we do different things for fun. I don't know. But we have this common bond, and it just gives me chills. And so when you see that you have this story and this testimony, and I know it's encouraging to us, and it will be to those who listen too. So thank you for sharing that. And that's just applicable no matter what in our lives, whether it's writing or some other dream. It doesn't matter. If God puts a call on your life, we have to be faithful to following that, and also knowing what the priorities are right in front of us that he's put in front of us. So.
Exactly. And to trust the process of his hand. He's very efficient in the way he uses his economy. And so every disappointment, every rejection, every waiting period has had a purpose. And I'll have to keep reminding myself of that. That is not a preaching moment. That is telling myself, because life is full of those, right?
Yeah.
Whether writing, whether parenting, whether job hunting, whether marriage, it's full of it. And
it's full of it.
It's full of it.
It is. Okay, well, we went deep right away, and I love that. And now I'm going to take us back to light, but maybe it's not super light. It may not be.
I'm horrible at light. No.
No, actually, I really am. It's my favorite to meet somebody and be like, all right, let's talk about the thing we need to pray about most in life. I love it. Okay, but let's talk a little bit about romance. Why do you write romance? Why did you decide that?
Well, there's several reasons, and some are a little more shallow than others. Let's start with the shallow. I love love. I love it. I love to watch stories, whether they're by romantic male and female leads falling in love, or a family, a found family, or a friendship love. I love writing love. And if you've read any of my stories, you know that I have all different kinds of love in there, because I believe that we were built for connection with other people. And I also would say that if God put romance in the Bible, he must like it too. So, a great question, why romance? I think within all of us, we have this desire to be seen, to be loved for who we are, to be accepted, and to belong somewhere. And the most beautiful way that shows is through this romantic sort of story. where we have two people who are better together than they would be apart. And I think it translates over cultures, it translates over ages, it translates through time. And I think because God has put in our hearts to be connected to other people, but also he uses the example of a bride and a bridegroom, as us being part of his connection to him, then I think that gives us all the more value for how romance does communicate something special that all of our hearts are looking for.
I agree. I love that. And what do you think romance specifically brings to the book world?
Story. The special kind of belonging through story. I mean, we've been telling stories before we could read. We've been telling stories before. Some of mine were true when I was little. Some of them were not, which was probably my prerequisite for fiction. But throughout time, we've been telling stories first.
Yes.
God starts with story in the beginning. Once upon a time, it's almost got the feel of, right?
Yes.
And so story communicates, whether that's romantic story or something crazy like Jamie Jo Wright writes, scary. Story communicates something. I think C.S. Lewis says we read to know we're not alone. And if at the heart of who we are is to belong somewhere, is to belong to someone, to be loved without judgment, to be loved just as we are in all of our flaws, then how much more beautiful to show that through story in a romantic way.
Yeah. Oh, that's so well said. So well said.
Thank you, Jesus, because I
Nope. No, it's perfect. And I wouldn't be able to articulate it that well. So I think that's why you're here, because you can do that. So
now she's setting me up.
So
I'm sure to fail now.
No. I had someone once tell me, I won't tell you who, but I had someone once tell me that romance books set incorrect expectations on real life. Like, I mean, you see it all the time. Like, my book boyfriend this, I found a new book boyfriend. In fact, even my best friend, when she read my first book I wrote, she goes, does your husband mind that your main character is not at all like him? I was like, no, because it's not real. Like, he doesn't care. But the point is, do you think that romance books in general set us up for incorrect expectations?
Okay, I got several thoughts about this.
Give us all of them. That's fine.
Yes, they do, and that's not bad. Because why wouldn't we aspire to something beautiful and better and good and hopeful and character driven and virtuous and all of those good things that they can help us aspire to, right?
Absolutely.
Secondly, if we're mature people who can separate fact and fiction, then we realize it is what it is. It's a story. And so these book boyfriends, which I never mind people having, especially if they're choosing from my books, I adore my heroes. I like writing heroes better than heroines. So what I see in that, though, is that how we're trying to write them is to show what little examples of all the beautiful characteristics of the perfect, quote, hero, right? I mean, isn't that beautiful? Why would we aspire to want someone that have a book boyfriend who's a really good guy, funny, rescue you, all these sorts of things? I think it can be a very good thing. Now, like anything in the world, if we get our priorities out of whack, then it's going to mess things up, right? So if we look at the characters in books as a replacement or an expectation, then that's just like I was saying about my struggle with maybe putting writing as an idol in my heart. That's the same thing, right? We are putting it in a place it doesn't belong. It's story. It's fiction. It has roots in nonfiction, right? We create characters from a set of characteristics that we find valuable. So it's from a nonfiction place, but how we handle it shows whether we have a mature perspective, or whether we need to pray that God helps us because we're struggling in certain areas. to have that proper perspective. I think that's my opinion. Again, there are probably many other answers for that. But I think in the most part, I see it as just fun and delightful. And I also see my responsibility to create heroes that are worth falling for because they have characteristics that make us want to see those in real people.
Yes. And we did a whole episode on Christian fiction, but that's one of the great things about Christian or inspirational fiction now is that you don't have the two-dimensional characters. You have characters who are flawed, who have backstories, who had pasts, and then we see the grace and the redemption. And I think you're right. That's exactly what stories should do. It should mirror the transformation that Christ can do in our lives.
Right. And we could look at even Christian books that are not romantic fiction and see characters that are like, wow, that's amazing. I mean, I look at Lord of the Rings. I love the Lord of the Rings. There are characters in there that I have no romantic interest in. Well, a few of them when I see them on the screen. But for the most part, I read about Samwise Gamgee. He is not like a hot guy, but there's something in his character that draws you forward.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't have anything to do with romance. Do you think anybody's going to, do you think people look at Samwise and they're like, I want to aspire to be like that. Look at that character. But they're not. It's not drawing them away from what good things are. It's drawing us toward good things, toward these, aspiring for these kind of characteristics that are heroic, that call us to want to be heroic.
I was going to say, speaking of heroic, Legolas inspired me to take archery in college. So
that is so cool. Aragorn just inspires me. Period.
So Chris is making us read Lord of the Rings. So Kelly and I are reading Lord of the Rings. Just the first book. That's
the Fellowship.
Yes, we're trying to read out of our genre. So we're trying to pick something for Carissa, since Carissa primarily reads fantasy. So we're trying to figure out something that will make her read that'll be different.
Yeah, it can be a tough read. You have to really want to.
And the hard part is I love the movies. I've rewatched all the movies. And so I'm like, the whole time I'm going to be like, that's not how it happened in the movie.
Right. And that's true. There are places
There's
where
so much more stuff in there, though. So much richness.
Great with the heart of the story. The movies
really
do great with the heart of the story. Except for Faramir. They do great with the heart of the story. They messed my Faramir up, but I have forgiven them.
Before we move on to the next question, I just want to see if, and there's no pressure, but Carissa or Christie, do either of you have anything you want to chime in or say or ask on that part of it?
I want to go back, and I believe it was your Mitchell's Crossing books, which I love because involved the North Carolina mountains, which I visit, and speech pathology, which is my job, which, by the way, is severely underrepresented in fiction. I feel like physical therapists get all the glory. No one knows what an OT does, so whatever. I love my OT.
OT is kind of all-encompassing stuff.
Everyone's like, I don't get what an OT does. I'm like, it's fingers, sensory. But I feel like there were a lot of kisses that happened in closets. So I didn't know if you were in your closet era at that point.
Okay, so I want to talk about the speech pathology thing. I am so determined to write another speech pathology heroine or hero, actually, because it's my career. It's what I do during the day, right? And there's so many ways to bring that into a story. And being a caregiver in that kind of way, a service provider, is a fantastic hero or heroine.
It is
characteristic. So yeah, I would love to do that again. It's been a while since I've written one, so I'm starting to kind of be like, ooh, let's write a speech pathologist again. I also want to write a policeman, since my dad was a police officer, and I've not done that yet either. So we'll see if
if you do that one, is he going to be like Rambo affiliated? Like, is that going to be his like inner hero man?
I'm thinking it's going to be more Andy Griffith. I want to do that. I want to be a police officer like that. I would love to write one of those small town good guys. So I think that would be super fun. But anyway, as far as closets, so I started this pattern early on, and I still do it. There will be books that pop up, and you'll be like, oh, there comes a closet kiss. It's not as often as it was in the earlier ones, but now that readers expect it, I do try to find ways to turn some kisses into closet kisses, because it's like a trademark.
It's like the forced proximity,
like Easter eggs almost. Like if you read far enough back of an author, you'll read something new and be like, oh, she,
Exactly.
This is amazing. I love it. I'm like mind blown. I love it. You have your own Easter eggs. So.
Yes, and it's funny too because I feel like as writers you do there's so many things in like the stories that I've written that I'll look back and read and I'll be like, I know why I put that in there.
Yeah.
Because it's either something like a Lego set or, some hobby of mine or some obscure date that I'll put in there. But I know it. No one else will know it, but it'll be my own personal Easter egg.
Exactly. It makes me so happy. I mean, I have people make fun of me because I love my own books so much and I reread them a lot.
You should.
I've listened to Authentically Izzy on the audiobook because the audiobook is fantastic. I've listened to it probably 8 times. I love it so much. And I am friends online with the audiobook narrators that did that.
Carissa does a lot of audiobooks and she's trying to get me into one. And the last one I read, I didn't love the voices. I'm not an audiobook person, but I tried it. I didn't love the voices. It kind of pulled me out of the story. So I had a hard time with it. But my friend, I read a lot of horror too. And my friend, she was doing an audiobook with horror. And at 2 a.m., she's sending me texts about Wordle. I'm like, why are you not asleep? And she's like, because there's something in the attic. And I was like a possum? And she's like, no, the book. And so she was freaked out, laying in bed, listening to this audiobook. And I'm like, why are you listening to this at night? So I am going to try that one. So we'll see. But I'll be listening to it when I'm traveling. So
well, the Authentically Izzy and Penelope and Luke, they did with a cast. And so
cool.
And there are accents because my characters are foreign. So it's hello, thank you very much. You just made my ears so happy.
Oh, that's so cool. That's amazing.
That's so much better than that.
Yes. Okay, well, since we're talking about Authentically Izzy, I was amazed at all the book references in there. Have you read those books? Did you search for quotes? Like, are these books that formed you? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've actually several questions about that. And it does make sense because there's so many references in there. I've read about 85% of the books that I put in that story. I wouldn't say that very many of them formed me. Some of them were very influential, but some of them I just enjoyed reading. And I thought, this will be a good book because it's a classic. Let's put Izzy would have read this.
Okay. Yeah.
So like, for example, one of my favorite books I read in my early life was Frankenstein. I love the book Frankenstein and Dracula. I love them. I think they're so well done.
Same.
And both of them have that epistolary feel. My first book that helped me travel beyond my little world in Appalachia was The Secret Garden. And I fell in love with that book. So there are books that are definitely important to me that I put in there. Lord of the Rings, another example. Narnia, another example. But not all of them. Some of them I need a book that represents this, so I would research. And then I would read parts of it because I didn't want to share something that I felt would be inappropriate. So I would read parts of the book and be like, okay, this one's all right. And I can quote it.
Yeah. Interesting, too, because you're thinking about it from your character's perspective. What would my character read? What would she want?
True,
so
yeah.
that makes sense. You're looking at it from her angle.
Should we say the premise of Authentically Izzy if people don't know?
Tell us.
What we're talking about.
Or the series. Even give us kind of the high-level premise of the series.
But me?
Yes,
okay.
You.
So Authentically Izzy is an epistolary series that there's 3 books and a novella. Authentically Izzy, Positively Penelope, Loyally Luke. And the first 2 are much more epistolary, which means through emails, letters, that sort of thing, than usually you get through narrative. And it's about, the first one, Authentically Izzy, is about a young lady whose cousin sets her up on a dating site, online dating site, to help her find a romance. And it ends up turning into this wonderful story about 2 very bookish people who live across the world from each other and have to figure out how they're going to make that work. And Izzy's been hurt in the past. She was left at the altar. She's very bookish and speaks in quotes. And so she's found it hard to find someone who relates to her. And our hero, which I won't tell you which one, is also very bookish, but he's got such a healthy family. She does too. I loved writing it because both sets of the family are healthy. Yeah. And that's not very common in fiction. No. And so it was really great to get to show these healthy family dynamics. And the sibling dynamics are just my favorite. I loved writing those.
I loved that too. I loved just the back and forth and how Luke would respond like a brother would respond. It was great. Yeah. What about tropes? We're going to do a whole episode on our favorite romance tropes.
Yes.
what are your favorites? Do you have favorite romance tropes?
I do. I love Friends to More. Friends to More is one of my favorites.
Okay.
I love Fish Out of Water. I love, I really like Marriage of Convenience, but it has to be done well. I am not, you want to not?
Yes.
I am not a huge fan of Enemies to More just because I don't like hating someone before I love them. So it has to be done really well for me to enjoy it because especially if the female is the one who's being really off-putting and putting the guy down, I really rally to the defense of the heroes, I'm afraid. And so it's got to be a really good Enemies to More for me to like it. It's just not my favorite, and I find it incredibly hard to write. Just because I want to like who I'm writing.
Yeah.
And I like romance, but the tension is great, right? So the tension for the Enemies to More can be really fantastic.
That's so funny. I feel like that's the only romance arc I can write.
That's great. That's
like
great
when I try to do other stuff, it just is not the same.
But see, isn't that awesome that you have that ability? And I really don't feel like I'm learning, right? But I don't feel like it's something that I really do very well because I want to like everybody. And I like
the arc of them realizing that they're wrong.
Yes.
Like classic Pride and Prejudice. Like,
exactly.
Oh, maybe I'm not as perfect as I thought I was. And maybe I actually have more in common with this person. Like, yeah.
I find that if I do it, it's a very short enemies part. And so, like,
and then they're friends.
Some like it, Scott, they start off very not liking each other. And it was fun to write that. But it doesn't last very long. It's like, I don't know, 7 chapters. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to marry you now.
Well, it's kind of related to like opposites attract in a way, which I feel like it's a different trope, but it kind of goes with enemies to lovers. So.
It does. Yeah.
It can, if you're opposite. Do you have any authors that you can think of off the top of your head who have done enemies to lovers well?
I'm trying to think of any I've read recently. I just finished reading my first Georgette Hare book, Cotillion, but it was not an Enemies to More, but it was very fun. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of.
That's okay.
I think Catherine Center does good Enemies to Lovers, or at least opposites. They have different goals in the beginning. Maybe they don't hate each other, but they're like different goals. And the
different goals is different. I don't mind that one. It's whenever they're starting out being very hostile toward each other. If they're very hostile, like even in Pride and Prejudice, there's a sense of civility. Even when they don't like each other, you don't necessarily completely dislike both of them. So if they're done in a way where you can still feel like you're connecting to them, both the hero and the heroine, and have reasons for what they're doing, I can handle that. But I just don't like really not liking my hero or my heroine.
Yeah. True.
Bethany Turner had to look up my Goodreads. Brynn and Sebastian hate each other. I mean, you kind of know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
That cover, but they kind of hated each other in the beginning.
Well, You've Got Mail, the movie.
Yes.
That's a great one.
But what they do about that, right? It does get a little nasty, but what they do, though, is they show the background of both characters really well to make you sympathize with them and see they're not really jerks. Joe Fox does really sometimes act like a jerk. When he leaves her at that restaurant, jerk move, jerk.
Oh, absolutely.
That's my favorite movie of all time.
So good.
I think Bethany Turner is fantastic. She's just got magic with words. She's amazing.
And she's so fun and lighthearted.
Oh, but Brynn and Sebastian hate each other. That was a good one.
I did.
Okay, so which of your books have readers liked best? And then which tropes are those? Do you know?
I don't know. I know that a lot of people have liked The Mistletoe Countess, which is a marriage of convenience, and a little bit of Fish Out of Water. I know that very, very much opposites attract in that one as well. I know that people have really enjoyed Authentically Izzy, and it doesn't have it's not Enemies to More. It's not Marriage of Convenience. I guess I would call it Friends to More, maybe. For its
I don't even know if you could put a classic trope on that because it's so. I can't even say the word epistolary. How do you say it?
Epistolary, yeah, like an epistle.
Epistolary.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't see their day-to-day interaction so much to where you'd see how they'd exist together
right
at the beginning.
I mean, they become friends and then they become more. So I guess you could say it's friends to more.
Yeah.
That one has been a really popular one. A Twist of Fate in the Mitchell's Crossroads series has been a really popular one. It's very much opposites attract. It's also, they don't start off liking each other very well. And that one I've gotten the most hit back on, my heroine being not very nice. And let's see.
Okay.
The Heart of the Mountains has been a really big one that people have loved, and it's very much opposites attract. Fish Out of Water, Appalachian. It's one of my favorite ones I've ever written. I don't have a favorite because all of them have a reason why I enjoy them.
Yeah.
But that one, I had the best time writing it because my hero is so quiet and unassuming, and my heroine just blows into his life and explodes it. And that was fun.
I think I'm hearing a lot of opposites attract and Fish Out of Water. Those two seem to be like your big.
And friends.
So what would be, so Fish Out of Water, how would you explain that within the romance? Because I just think of it more as like a trope for explaining stuff to characters.
Oh, well, I mean, I see it as like a person is taken out of their regular environment and placed to another.
Okay,
So like in the Mistletoe Countess, she is an American heiress who wasn't planning on getting married and has to take her sister's place and is suddenly becoming a countess. So she's thrust into a world she never expected to be in. So there's that kind of unexpected learning, not fitting that world at first and that sort of thing. So how that works really well in romance is that there are plenty of opportunities. It's kind of like in A Twist of Fate. She's kind of has a little bit of a fish out of water, thrust into an environment of this rural area where she didn't want to be. And so you get these wonderful opportunities for teaching and learning together and humor. I love to write humor. So Fish Out of Water allows for lots of humor. Yes. It also allows for lots of characterization, character growth, because you're being placed in situations where your true character has to decide what it's going to do. Right? Am I going to thrive? Am I going to hide? Am I going to fight? And so those are great character pressures to put on a character. In my opinion, again, as a writer, when I'm doing that, I'm like, oh, this happened to you in the heart of the mountains. My heroine is British and she comes into Appalachia in 1918. Whoa.
Opposite. Yep.
Totally out of water.
Yep.
And so she's faced with like one thing right after another of very hard mountain life stuff. Chased by a cougar, held at gunpoint, lots of different things that she would never have expected in her previous life in England. So, that's how I would see it in the romance genre. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. So it really can fit with any genre, but you put it into it in a romance story.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. Yeah. Now, I feel like your most recent ones that I've read are more, would you call them like rom-com-y? And then I was thinking the Freddie and Grace series is more like your romance, adventure, mystery, almost like not a female Indiana Jones, but it's like you have like your mystery, like your adventure, and there's still like some stuff they're kind of trying to get through, resolve, I guess. Now, I haven't read your historical series that you were just talking about with the Appalachian. So how does that one compare? Does that one have like your hijinks, or is it more like a serious thread with romance?
I just write whatever I'm writing. Okay, so
that's great.
So the Freddie and Grace series really just started out with me loving combining romance, history, and mystery together. I don't want to be scary, but I like the mystery adventure side of things, right? The Appalachian books are very much a toned down version, I think, of the Freddie and Grace kinds of hijinks. So you still have a lot of very high stakes stuff happening because you're in the mountains of Appalachia with animals that are dangerous and drunks and things like that were very real life, but they have this more dramatic side to them because they were hard realities of that world. But you still have that kind of some of those adventure sides of it. It has more of those have more of a dramatic feel than a humorous feel. And the Freddie and Grace series has a lot more of the humorous feel to it in their hijinks. So, yeah. I guess that's part of how I explain it. And I would say the Mitchell's Crossroads series isn't rom-com, but very much contemporary romance. And then even people who've read like Some Like It Scott, some people are just calling it a contemporary romance, which is fine. I still feel like it gives vibes of rom-com.
I definitely think I'm in the middle of it right now. And so I definitely think it's rom-com-y. And it definitely has the fish out of water feel and all like the hijinks. And I was going to say, a lot of your newer characters have these just, I mean, not epic incidents, but I'm like, does she draw from her own life? Like, do these things happen to Pepper on a daily basis? That she just puts them in her stories?
Some of them have. Yeah.
Well, that kind of ties, maybe you kind of already answered the question, like, because it seems like you did historical and then it almost like you've switched to more contemporary, or is it just kind of whatever you feel like?
I'm doing both at the same time. Like my first Regency book comes out in October.
Ooh, okay.
I am extremely excited about it. It's probably one of my favorite books I've ever written. It was such fun. And so it's very much high humor, romance and high humor. They told me I could not put mystery in it. So I was like, can I put, no, you can't. I was like, okay. But I also just signed a contract for my next romantic comedy. So I can consistently writing both genres. I have 3 books coming out this year and 3 next year.
Oh my goodness.
2 are historical and 1 is contemporary. So that is going to be the pattern for the next 2 years. And I don't
say that again. 2 historical, 1 contemporary.
Yeah. So it'll be Some Like It Scott's contemporary. The 4th Freddie and Grace book comes out in July. And then my first Regency comes out in October, which is Sense and Suitability. And then
nice.
I have the next romantic comedy that comes out next May. Then the last Freddie and Grace book that comes out in July, and then the second Regency book that comes out in October.
Wait, so is HarperCollins doing all of these, or are they with different publishers?
So HarperCollins is doing the contemporary and the Regency, and Barber is doing the Freddie and Grace series.
Oh, wow. Okay, and who's your agent?
Rachel McMillan.
Okay. I've heard of her.
Yes.
I don't think I've met her, but I've heard of her.
Yeah.
Okay.
She doesn't come down to the U.S. very often. She's up in Canada.
Canadian.
Is she Canadian?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic encourager.
Well, and obviously she's getting the job done for you, so that's great. Like this is great. What do you read when you're looking to escape? Like if you're just needing to check out, what's your go-to?
It kind of changes. I try not to read what I'm writing. So I just finished the edits for my Regency book. And so that's when I started reading a Regency book. I'd never read Georgette Heyer before. And so I read my first one of hers because she writes Regency. So I love Mimi Matthews. I love Nicole Vann. Neither one are Christian fiction writers, but they are both fantastic writers because they do what I love, which is that high romantic tension. Yep. Neither one of them have a whole lot of high humor either, but they do have some humor. But that romantic tension really can be the thing for me that I like to read. I love Laura Franz. I love her writing style. She doesn't write anything like me, but what I love about her is the beauty of what she writes. She has this amazing ability to make words sound like music. I love reading Mary Keneally when I want to laugh. I'll read some of her stuff. I read Bethany Turner because I think she does a great job with character and humor. I don't know. I do pick up different people just if I'm interested. Like I'll read some fantasy. I reread things I love. I read my own books. I love reading Jane Austen. I love reading classics that I've enjoyed before. I'm trying to think. I'm looking across the way at my favorites bookshelf. I have a favorites one where I've kept the ones that are my favorites.
Well, that's awesome.
Did you get your room organized?
Siri, not all the way. Siri Mitchell was one of the first books I read that reminded me that I could do this romance stuff. And then There's Denise Hunter. I really like reading her stuff.
Oh, I like her stuff too. Yeah.
So, yeah. I also have Austen Land up there by Shannon Hale. It's one I'll keep forever.
Nice.
And the Amelia Peabody series is a series I've adored for years.
I love it. That's
the mystery ones, right?
Yes.
I've only read like maybe one or two, but it was good.
So much fun. I really could just read them over and over. They are great on audiobook too. The narrator for that one is fantastic. I'm trying to see what else I've got over here. I have almost every Mimi Matthews book. And then the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Society is on my favorites list. So yeah.
I was wondering if you had read that one with your epistolary.
Epistolary. Well, think epistle, like the Epistle of John. It gets me started.
Oh,
epistolary.
There we go.
Yeah,
I
epistolary.
can do that.
I don't pronounce the T though, but maybe it's like a dialect thing.
Epistolary.
Or I'm
epistolary.
Doing either way,
epistolary. I don't know.
And I didn't prep you for this question, but now that you told us that you're writing or releasing 3 books a year, I'm just curious, like, what does your time split look like with editing and drafting? Like, how do you do that?
It's crazy right now. My goal was to have 2 books a year, but God in his good kindness overflowed my cup. And so I'm very grateful. So that's not a complaint. It's just a way to manage time differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, my schedule looks very busy. Now, it's helpful that my children are older now so that they have their own schedules. They do their own self-motivation. I don't have to give baths and put people to bed anymore.
Yep.
And because that changes the dynamics. Once we're done with supper, I disappear and write or edit or whatever I might need to do for writing. That becomes my writing time or my class prep time if I'm lecturing for a college class. But so it stays really full. Every moment is somehow worked into writing. So even when I go upstairs to watch a movie with my husband, I'll have my computer and we'll be watching a movie together. And if I'm constantly story thinking. I see that as brainstorming when I'm watching a movie because I think movies are incredibly inspirational in the story creation realm. And so when I'm watching a movie, I feel like I'm researching. I'm enjoying it too, or not enjoying it. And then I can figure out why.
Yeah. Then you know why.
But I feel like it's very much still a part of that story creation.
Okay. Yeah. You're busy and faithful to that task in front of you. So that's great.
Now it may change to two books a year in the future, unless God allows me to back up my days at work, at the day job, which is my hope. My hope is to be able to, because of speech pathology, you can have a schedule that's not a 5-day a week work week. And so my goal is to get to a point where that's more flexible.
Yep. Okay, those are our questions. Before we go, Carissa or Christy, do you have anything else that you want to say or ask to Pepper?
I would like to ask, did you come up with your hashtag, blame it on a Basham book, or did your fans do it? Because I've been trying with Christy and Kern and I'm like, nothing is happening in my head to make something snappy.
That's so cute.
I didn't know I didn't have a hashtag. My readers made it. And so when I started a little group of early readers, they were first called the Pepper Shakers. And that group of people got together. And then a couple of them within that group started saying, we've got a hashtag for you. We're going to blame it on a Basham. I would say, I think the instigator for that idea was Joy Tiffany. If I can call her out, she'd love that. And so, but I think that was the initial start of that hashtag was within them. Cause I would never presume to figure out something like that.
I do. I'm trying.
I know it's hard. So, I mean, I would rather do the book hashtags like hashtag hot Scots.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are the ones I create that are not about me. So yeah, they created that. It was very fun.
That's creative.
And like I said, I'm halfway through some Like It Scott. My great aunt was actually Scottish by marriage, so I don't think I actually am. But the way you've written the dialogue, how did that come about? Are you just a fan of Scottish movies? Do you go there? Do you have family? You're like, hey, I want to say this. How would they say it in Scottish?
Yeah, so dialect is really tricky. And anytime, like I write Appalachian too, in my Appalachian books, I try to make people hear them talking. And I think very cool that you're a speech pathologist. I have always been a fan of dialect differences and accents. It has been something since I was very little that has fascinated me. So I not only watch movies with the accent I want to write, but I do a whole lot of research on YouTube and Instagram, listening to people from that dialect and hearing how the melody of that accent works, and then doing research on what kind of words will be used. But the problem is that with dialects, you want to be very careful because you want it still to be a smooth read. And not,
and I think it is.
That which
like it doesn't, and it's funny because I do say it in my head like I have some broken Scottish accent.
Yeah.
When I'm reading it, I'm trying to say it like they would say it. But yeah, like it's just enough where it's like it puts me in that feel, but it doesn't take me out because I'm trying to figure out what's being said. Like the context makes it work great for me.
That's good, and that's what I do, and I love studying accents and words that are part of those accents. I love it so much.
What tips would you give to someone who wants to write romance?
Well, first of all, I'd just say write. But one of the best things about romance is that there's so many places for inspiration. I would say that take some of your favorite movies you've seen or some of your favorite romance books you've seen and be a detective. Go through them. What makes you fall in love with them? What's working when you're watching or reading that makes you go, oh, I feel this. I want them to be together. I want this to work out for them. A lot of the ones we love have similar storylines, similar story beats that help teach us what's working and as story creators. So that really helps me. I'm still pulling apart books and movies when I watch them to help me go, what worked really well about that? Why did I care so much about those two people finding each other? What was it that they set up in this book or this movie that caused me to want to get to the end? Caused me to want to reread it, caused me to want to put it on my keeper shelf. You know, what happened? That's really been a thing for me. That's, I think, reading good writing where I'm learning from other people who are very good writers who write romance well, but also being a detective in those books and in those movies to help grow. I think that for me has been a big deal.
Those are good tips. I like those tips.
And you get to watch a movie.
Yeah, it's the research. We love it. Well, we are so grateful for your time today, Pepper. And listeners, I hope you gleaned so much information. We will, of course, share Pepper's newest releases on our Lit Ladies Instagram. So we'll be cheering for you. When does Some Like It Scott come out officially?
Yeah, so April is when it will be out. So
okay,
you guys can just hopefully enjoy that. I know I'm so glad that someone is reading it right now.
and yes, I got back on NetGalley because I was like, let me see what I can get on NetGalley. And I got, I think, Tony Shiloh's new book. I got Becca Kinzer, her new book, but it comes out in like June. So I'm like, so I have all like these romance books to read. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, they're both of them. Tony and Becca's both look like they're going to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yes,
well,
that would be my next one. So wearing green to celebrate.
Some Like It Scott. Love it.
Thank you for joining us on our literary journey. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at LitLadiesPod and rate and review on your podcast platform. We'll end today with a quote from Adam Beatty by George Eliot. What greater thing is there for two human souls than to feel that they are joined for life, to strengthen each other in all labor, to rest on each other in all sorrow, to minister to each other in all pain, to be one with each other in silent, unspeakable memories at the moment of the last parting.